Jack's ship spiraled out of control, alarms blaring as the harsh pull of gravity dragged him toward an uncharted planet. His cockpit was filled with sparks and cursing. "Oh, great! Just the place I wanted to crash, Death Planet number 5, he muttered, slamming every button in a desperate attempt to slow the descent. The ship hit the ground with a jarring crunch, leaving a smoking trail in its wake. Jack groaned, crawling out of the wreckage. His surroundings were both eerily beautiful and downright terrifying, towering purple trees with glowing leaves and an unsettling silence. Before he could catch his breath, a sharp noise made him freeze. Out of the shadows emerged a group of towering, muscular alien women, each wielding weapons that looked far too sharp for comfort. Their leader, a striking figure with deep violet skin and glowing yellow eyes, stepped forward and pointed a spear at him. "You dare trespass here, human?" Jack raised his hands, trying to suppress the instinct to run. "Trespass? Lady, I just crash-landed. I didn't exactly book a vacation package." His sarcasm seemed to confuse them, as murmurs rippled through the group. The leader narrowed her eyes. "We are the tribe of Vorith, feared across galaxies. No one leaves here alive." Jack smirked, his survival instincts kicking in. "Feared across galaxies? That's a pretty big Yelp review. Look, I'm just trying to fix my ship, not join the menu." His quip earned a low growl from one of the warriors, but the leader raised her hand to silence them. "This one talks too much. Perhaps he should prove his worth before we decide his fate." The warriors erupted in agreement, their language filled with guttural laughter. Jack's stomach dropped. "Prove my worth? Does that involve not dying? Because I'm really good at that." The leader, who introduced herself as Zyra, ignored him and gestured for her warriors to take him. Jack's protests were cut short as he was hauled toward their village, a strange combination of primitive huts and advanced alien tech. His sarcastic remarks didn't let up, even as they tied him to a post in the center of the village. "So, is this the VIP treatment, or did I just miss happy hour?" he called out, earning another round of growls and a particularly menacing glare from a warrior twice his size. Zyra stepped forward with an air of authority. "Silence, human. You will undergo the trial of worthiness. Survive, and you may live. Fail, and, well, you'll find out." Jack's mind raced. Trial of worthiness? Sounds fun. Does it come with a souvenir t-shirt? His sarcasm masked his fear, but Zyra's smirk told him she saw right through it. "You'll see soon enough." The trial began with Jack being pushed into a pit filled with what he could only describe as demon chickens. The creatures were feathered nightmares with razor-sharp beaks and a penchant for violence. Jack ducked and dodged, using every ounce of his human agility and sheer dumb luck to stay alive. "Is this your idea of a petting zoo?" he yelled, narrowly avoiding a particularly aggressive peck. The tribe watched, their laughter echoing through the village. To his surprise, some of them even began to cheer him on. After what felt like an eternity, Jack emerged from the pit, covered in scratches but victorious. "That's one for Team Human," he declared, collapsing to the ground. Zyra wasn't impressed. "You survived the first task. But the real test lies ahead." Jack groaned, dragging himself to his feet. "Of course it does. What's next? Arm wrestling a bear?" He wasn't far off. The next trial involved navigating a gauntlet of alien plants that seemed hellbent on strangling him. Their vines wrapped around his limbs, pulling him in every direction. Jack resorted to desperate measures, including biting one of the vines. "Yeah, how do you like it?" he spat, earning another round of laughter from the tribe. Finally, after what felt like hours of humiliation and near-death experiences, Jack stood before Zyra again. He was bruised, battered, and thoroughly exhausted, but he couldn't resist a grin. "So, did I pass, or are we still waiting for the judges' scores?" Zyra studied him for a moment before nodding. "You have proven yourself amusing." Jack blinked. "Amusing? Is that alien for barely competent?" The warriors erupted into laughter, and even Zyra couldn't suppress a smirk. "You are an odd creature, human. But you have survived where others have not. For now you live. Jack exhaled in relief but couldn't resist one last jab. Great. Now, about fixing my ship. Zyra's smirk widened. Not so fast. Your trials are not over yet. Jack groaned, realizing this was only the beginning. Jack stood in the middle of the village, his makeshift, ceremonial outfit clinging to him like an ill-fitting swimsuit. The crowd roared in approval, their cheers echoing across the strange alien sky. He raised his hand awkwardly, trying to silence them, but the noise only grew louder. Zyra, standing beside him, leaned in. They accept you as their leader now. You will guide us. Leader? Jack said, his voice cracking. I think there's been a mistake. I don't even lead in my group chats. Zyra's glowing eyes narrowed. You survived the trials. That makes you worthy. Do not question our ways. Jack sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Right, because everything about this makes total sense. He looked at the tribe, all of them gazing at him with a mixture of respect and unrestrained lust. A tall warrior stepped forward, holding a bundle of jagged metal and shiny fabric. For you, leader. My finest armor. Jack took it reluctantly. Thanks. I think. He inspected the pieces, quickly realizing that wearing this so-called armor would leave most of his important parts exposed. Is this functional, or is it for, ceremonial purposes? The warrior smirked. Both. Before Jack could protest, another warrior approached, handing him a steaming bowl of something that smelled like burnt tires. A gift for strength and virility, she said, her tone dead serious. Jack hesitated, staring into the ominous-looking stew. Do I have to eat it, or can I just admire it from a safe distance? The tribe laughed, but Zyra silenced them with a gesture. You are their leader now. Show respect for their offerings. Jack grimaced and took a cautious sip. The taste was as bad as he'd feared, like swallowing a campfire while being punched in the face. He forced a smile, trying not to gag. Delicious. Definitely enhances virility. The warriors erupted into cheers, apparently satisfied with his reaction. Jack wiped his mouth, wondering how long he could keep up this charade without dying of embarrassment, or food poisoning. Later, as the sun set, Jack was dragged into the middle of what seemed to be a council meeting. Zyra stood at the head of the group, her presence commanding. As our leader, you must make decisions for the tribe. Tonight we discuss our defense against the Korlax. The Korlax? Jack repeated. Are they another group of terrifying aliens who want to kill me? Zyra nodded. They are rivals who threaten our borders. They have heard of you and may challenge us. Jack rubbed his temples. Great. Just what I needed, intergalactic beef. He looked at the council, all of them waiting for his input. Okay, what's the usual plan for handling this kind of thing? A warrior leaned forward, her expression serious. We fight until they retreat or die. Jack winced. Right, of course. Very straightforward. But what if we tried? I don't know, talking to them first? The room fell silent, the warriors exchanging confused glances. Zyra raised an eyebrow. Talking? Yes, you know, diplomacy, Jack said, waving his hands for emphasis. We sit down, exchange some pleasantries, maybe offer them some of that stew, on second thought, maybe not the stew. The point is, we try to avoid bloodshed. The council erupted into murmurs, clearly baffled by the concept. One warrior finally spoke up. And if they refuse to talk? Jack shrugged. Then we hit them with Plan B. But at least we tried Plan A first. Zyra tilted her head, considering his words. You are strange, human. But your ideas intrigue me. We will attempt this diplomacy. Fantastic, Jack said, clapping his hands together. Now, if we could just figure out a way to not make me the main course at every meal. The council meeting devolved into chaos as warriors debated the merits of Jack's plan. Some found his ideas laughable, while others seemed genuinely curious. Jack leaned back, trying to process his new role. Somehow, he had gone from surviving trials to running a tribal council in the span of a single day. Later that night, as Jack sat alone near the fire, Zyra approached him, her expression unreadable. You handled yourself well today. Thanks, I think, Jack said, poking at the fire with a stick. Not exactly the promotion I was hoping for, but hey, at least I'm not dead. Zyra sat beside him, her presence both intimidating and oddly comforting. Your ways are strange, but your humor, it amuses them. You have a gift. Yeah, well, humor's kind of my default defense mechanism, Jack admitted. Keeps me from screaming most of the time. Zyra studied him, her gaze intense. You are not like the others who came before you. They were weak, fearful. You are different. Jack chuckled nervously. Different good, or different we're still deciding whether to eat you. Zyra smirked, a rare hint of warmth in her otherwise stoic demeanor. Good. For now. Jack swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close she was sitting. He cleared his throat, trying to shift the conversation. So, what's the deal with the whole leader thing? Is there a retirement plan, or am I stuck with this forever? Zyra's smirk widened. You are ours now, human. There is no escape. Jack laughed, though he wasn't entirely sure if she was joking. Figures. Well, at least the company's interesting. Zyra stood, her commanding presence returning. Rest well, leader. Tomorrow, we prepare for the Korlax. Jack watched her walk away, a mix of admiration and dread swirling in his mind. What the hell have I gotten myself into? He muttered, leaning back against the log. For better or worse, he was stuck here, and somehow, that thought wasn't as terrifying as it should have been. Jack woke up to the sound of blaring horns, a noise so loud it felt like his skull was vibrating. He stumbled out of his makeshift tent, rubbing his eyes, only to find the entire tribe gathered in the central square. Zyra stood at the forefront, her voice commanding as she addressed the crowd. The Korlax approach, she announced, her tone both stern and invigorating. The warriors roared in response, raising their weapons in preparation. Jack, still groggy, blinked at the commotion. Wait, they're here already? I thought we had time to negotiate. Zyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. Your plan of diplomacy has failed before it began. They rejected our invitation and declared they would take what they want, by force. Jack groaned. Of course they did. Why did I think intergalactic politics would be easier than arguing with my landlord? He straightened up, realizing the entire tribe was looking to him for guidance. Okay, fine. Plan B it is. What's our usual strategy for handling these guys? Brute strength and superior numbers, Zyra replied. But this time, we have you. Right, Jack said, trying to muster confidence. Because I'm such a tactical genius. He paced back and forth, racking his brain for ideas. Okay, listen. If we're going to fight these guys, we need to be smart about it. No more charging in headfirst. We need traps, distractions, and whatever else you've got that can cause chaos. Zyra frowned, clearly skeptical. You suggest we fight like cowards? No, Jack said quickly. I'm suggesting we fight like humans. Trust me, we're experts at making a mess of things. The tribe murmured among themselves, some clearly unsure about Jack's unorthodox methods. Zyra silenced them with a wave of her hand. Very well, human. Show us what you can do. Jack spent the next several hours rallying the tribe, explaining his plan in detail. They would set up traps along the most likely routes of attack, using their surroundings to their advantage. The alien plants that had nearly killed him during the trial were repurposed as living landmines, their vines ready to entangle any unsuspecting invaders. Jack even convinced a few warriors to use their questionable cooking skills to create a batch of the stew, which would be weaponized as an unpleasant surprise for the Korlax. As they worked, Jack couldn't help but notice the way Zyra watched him, her gaze sharp and calculating. He wasn't sure if she was impressed or still deciding whether to kill him after this was all over. Either way, he focused on the task at hand, determined to prove himself. By the time the Korlax arrived, the tribe was ready. Jack stood at the front lines with Zyra, his heart pounding in his chest. The rival faction emerged from the trees, a menacing group of heavily armed warriors who looked like they could crush him with a single blow. Their leader, a towering figure with crimson skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward. "Is this the famous human leader?" The Korlak leader sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Pathetic. Hand over your territory, and we may spare some of you." Jack stepped forward before Zyra could respond. "Wow, you must be the Korlak leader. Nice to meet you. Quick question, do you always start negotiations with threats, or is today a special occasion?" The Korlak warriors bristled, their weapons raised, but their leader held up a hand, intrigued by Jack's boldness. "You think your wit can save you, human?" "No," Jack said, grinning. "But this might." He snapped his fingers, signaling the tribe to spring their traps. Chaos erupted as vines shot out from the ground, ensnaring the Korlaks and throwing their formation into disarray. The alien plants wrapped around their legs and arms, pulling them in every direction. The tribe charged in, taking advantage of the confusion. Jack stayed back, coordinating the attack and shouting directions. "Remember, aim for the ones not covered in salad." The Korlak leader broke free of the vines, his rage palpable. He charged at Jack, who barely had time to dodge. "Okay, Plan C!" Jack yelled, scrambling to avoid the giant's crushing blows. He spotted a pot of the weaponized stew nearby and grabbed it, hurling it at the Korlak leader's face. The leader roared in pain, the noxious concoction blinding him temporarily. Zyra seized the opportunity, leaping forward and delivering a devastating blow to the Korlak leader's chest. He collapsed to the ground, defeated. The remaining Korlaks, seeing their leader down, retreated into the forest. The tribe erupted into cheers, their victory cemented. Jack collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily. "Okay," he said between gasps. "Not gonna lie, I'm kind of proud of that one." Zyra approached him, her expression unreadable. "You fought well, human. Perhaps you are more than just a jester." Jack smirked. "High praise coming from you. So, does this mean I get a break now?" Zyra tilted her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Not yet. There is much to discuss." Jack groaned but couldn't help feeling a sense of accomplishment. For the first time since arriving on this planet, he felt like he might actually belong. Sort of. The aftermath of the battle left the village buzzing with energy. Warriors exchanged victorious grins, some still tangled in the alien plants that had helped them win. Jack, however, was focused on the Korlak leader, who was now tied up in the middle of the square. He leaned against a nearby post, still catching his breath, when Zyra approached. "You have earned their respect," she said, her tone softer than usual. "Even the Korlak leader acknowledges your strategy." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? I'm sure the stew to the face really helped drive the point home." Zyra almost smiled, though her usual stoicism remained intact. "Your methods are unorthodox, but they worked. The tribe sees you as a leader now." Jack shrugged. "Yeah, well, I'm not exactly cut out for permanent leadership. I was kind of hoping this whole temporary war hero gig would come with an exit plan." Zyra tilted her head, studying him. "You speak as though you do not wish to stay." "Why?" Jack sighed, his sarcasm momentarily replaced with honesty. "Because I don't belong here. I'm just a guy who crash-landed on the wrong planet. I'm not some great warrior or brilliant strategist. I got lucky, that's all." Zyra frowned, clearly not used to hearing self-doubt. "Luck does not inspire loyalty. You have proven yourself more than capable. Perhaps it is you who doubts your place here." Jack opened his mouth to respond, but the sound of the Korlak leader grumbling interrupted him. "You humans are more trouble than you're worth." The alien spat, his voice filled with disdain. "But I admit, you have earned my respect. A rare thing." Jack blinked, caught off guard by the backhanded compliment. Thanks? I think?" Zyra stepped forward, her presence commanding. "What will you do now, Korlak? Your defeat is undeniable." The Korlak leader glared at her, then at Jack. "I will return to my people. But know this, human, you may have won today, but you have made enemies in places you cannot imagine." Jack rolled his eyes. Oh great, intergalactic grudges. Just what I needed. Can I pencil you in for next Tuesday? The Korlak leader growled but said nothing more as Zyra signaled for him to be released. He stumbled away, his pride clearly wounded, while the tribe celebrated their victory. Jack, however, couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. As the evening wore on, the tribe gathered around the central fire for a feast in Jack's honor. Plates of alien food were passed around, most of which Jack politely declined after his earlier experience with the stew. Zyra sat beside him, her imposing presence softened slightly by the glow of the fire. You have brought the tribe a great victory, she said, her tone almost warm. But your work here is far from done. Jack raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The Korlaks are gone, the village is safe, and I'm pretty sure I've hit my quota of near-death experiences for the week. Zyra smirked, a rare expression that caught Jack off guard. Leadership is not about surviving battles alone. It is about uniting your people, ensuring their future. And whether you like it or not, this tribe has chosen you. Jack groaned, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, about that. I'm not exactly the long-term commitment type. Can't you find someone else to take over? Zyra leaned in slightly, her gaze intense. You underestimate your value, human. This tribe sees you as more than a leader. You have shown them courage, wit, and strength. Qualities they admire and desire. Jack coughed, nearly choking on his drink. Desire? Care to elaborate? Zyra's smirk deepened, and for the first time, Jack felt genuinely out of his depth. Let's just say that your presence here has stirred things among the tribe. Jack looked around, suddenly noticing the way several warriors were watching him. Their expressions ranged from admiration to something much more intense. He swallowed hard, realizing just how complicated things were about to get. Well, he said, forcing a grin. At least I won't be bored. The night continued with laughter, stories, and the kind of camaraderie Jack hadn't experienced in years. Despite his earlier protests, he couldn't deny that a part of him felt at home here. These aliens, for all their quirks and misunderstandings, had accepted him in a way that surprised him. As the fire died down and the tribe began to disperse, Zyra stood and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. You have earned their loyalty, but more importantly, you have earned mine. That is not easily given. Jack looked up at her, unsure of what to say. For once, his usual sarcasm failed him. Instead, he simply nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Thanks, Zyra. That means a lot. She nodded in return, her expression softening just enough to reveal a glimpse of vulnerability. Rest well, leader. Tomorrow, we begin the next chapter. Jack watched her walk away, the weight of her words sinking in. He had come to this planet by accident, but now it seemed fate had other plans for him. Whether he was ready or not, he was part of something bigger, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from it. As he settled into his makeshift bed, Jack let out a deep breath, a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be boring again.